Yes, and welcome to this week's podcast from Core Ottawa, citizens researching origins for your edification, exhortation, and education. Visit us on the web, coreottawa.ca. Lots on the go this week. Something I've been forgetting about the past couple of podcasts, website of the week. Every week I want to highlight a very well done website relating to the creation and evolution debate. And this week's pick, website of the week, scienceagainstevolution.org. Hilarious website, very well written, meticulously researched. I highly encourage you go there. Last week, you recall, we introduced the question of the month. Remember, you can send us your rants, questions, queries, all over to coreottawa@gmail.com. Don't forget, drop us a line, let us know, give us your feedback, and if you can, answer this question of the month. Do you think your brain was intelligently designed? All right, send in your answers to coreottawa@gmail.com. Okay, what do we got here? Yes. If you recall last week, we started addressing the recent Nova PBS series. The program that came out last month, unfortunately, I was in Alberta at the time, and I was really unable to respond at the time. The show was called Judgment Day, Intelligent Design on Trial. This was a documentary on the Kitzmiller-Dover trial, and some friendly neighborhood skeptics on YouTube called me on my claims when I said that intelligent design is not creation in disguise. I disagreed with the conclusions of Judge Jones at the Kitzmiller-Dover trial, and that was precisely the reason that I said what I did, that creation is not, or intelligent design is not, creationism in disguise. I'm sorry, I must respectfully disagree with Judge Jones, but we will get to him later. When you get to the Nova website, the full link is here, pbs.org/WGBH/Nova/ID. And when you get to that web page, right down in the middle is a little link heading over to Defining Science, and they ask a bunch of evolutionary experts their opinions on defining science. So we've been going to these sound bites. This is straight off the Nova website. You can listen along yourself. This week we are going to listen to what Nick Matzke has to say. Now, Nick Matzke, okay, is the Public Information Project Director for the National Center for Science Education, one of my favorite pro-evolutionary societies. And his comments were subtitled, Avoiding the Supernatural. Last week we dealt with Miss Barbara Forrest, who was the professor of philosophy. We responded to her comments. A lot of the feedback we got from the last podcast, a number of people were expecting a video podcast. It was audio only. And so, hey, we aim to please. So this week's podcast is a video podcast, and I will try and get podcasts out hopefully once a week as I can. The next couple podcasts, I go on tour in the U.S. in a couple weeks here, so the next couple of podcasts will probably be coming from on the road somewhere, maybe in my van on the side of the road, who knows. But let's go to Nick Matzke, and let's hear what Nick has to say about defining science and the supernatural.
One of the core features of science for hundreds of years has been the reliance on natural explanations. And while it's true that there's various gray areas in defining the edges of science, in distinguishing science from pseudoscience, the issue of the supernatural is not one of those gray areas. If you really look at the history of science, many scientific fields really didn't get started until supernatural explanations were discarded and natural explanations were adopted. Before evolution, this happened in geology, it happened in physics.
And that brings us to the myth of the day. Yes, Mr. Matzke brought up the myth of the day. Every week at Core Ottawa, we will attempt to highlight one of the famous myths on our wall of fame here at Core Ottawa. And this week's myth, evolution is science, and science is helpless without evolution. This is one of the more promulgated myths of the century. And Mr. Matzke again mentioned that many scientific fields did not get started until supernaturalism was tossed out of the picture. Nonsense. These foundations of science were based in the work of Christian theists who believed in the supernatural and felt it was their God-given duty to research how God did what he did and how God set things up in accord with Genesis, where the Lord placed Adam in the garden and told him to subdue the earth. They felt it was their God-given duty. Now, if you go to the creationinfo.com website, this is the Canadian portal for Creation Ministries. When you get to the homepage, scroll right down to the bottom, you will see a link to List of Creation Scientists. Click on that link, and about halfway down the page, you will see a list of famous individuals who were creationists, the founding fathers of many of our modern sciences. Some of the names will surprise you. Kepler, Linnaeus, John Ray, Robert Boyle, Sir Isaac Newton, Charles Babbage, James Joule, William Thomson, Michael Faraday, Louis Pasteur, James Clerk Maxwell, Edmund Sedgwick, Andrew Murray, Richard Owen. Richard Owen, incidentally, was a creationist, the founder of the British Museum of Natural History and the man who coined the term dinosaur. Yes, he was a creationist. But even then, Linnaeus, for example, also on that list, Linnaeus was the one who invented the classification system for species. Now, interestingly, the reason he called them species is because he believed they were specially created. It is a myth to say that evolution is science, or that science is helpless without evolution, or that if we acknowledge the supernatural, suddenly our science becomes bankrupt. These men have proved it and made the foundations of science what it is today. Now, let's back up to what Mr. Nick Matzke said a few moments ago. He talked about natural explanations being the only acceptable explanation. In part, I agree with him. However, what Mr. Matzke doesn't realize, and most evolutionists do not realize this, okay? Forgive me if I tend to step on a few toes here. I'm merely attempting to be blunt. I'm not trying to be rude or condescending, but you need to understand, whether you believe in creation or whether you believe in evolution, you believe in the supernatural. Because we have natural and scientific laws, such as the laws of biogenesis. Laws of biogenesis say that life only comes from life. Evolution has life arising mysteriously from non-life. If it defies scientific and natural laws, then evolution is neither scientific nor natural. It is supernatural by very definition of the word. So let's go right back to Mr. Matzke and what he has to say on defining science.
This is really fundamental to the history of science, the reliance on natural explanations, and it's not a trivial thing to just toss that out, particularly when the proponents of supernaturalism in science have nothing to propose except a miracle, except God did it or an intelligent designer did it. End of story, stop the investigation.
Okay, let's backtrack for a second. Listen carefully to what he said. We are calling upon the supernatural. I agree. I completely agree. We as creationists, we are saying, yes, God did it. The intelligent design community, they're not that specific. They're just saying an intelligent being did it. Then they leave it at that, okay? But yes, we as creationists are saying God did it. But Mr. Matzke is still calling upon the supernatural. He just doesn't know it. You see, he has to call upon supernatural explanations to defy natural laws, such as the laws of biogenesis. He just doesn't realize it. This is a double standard to, either knowingly or unknowingly, call upon the supernatural to explain the problem that you have before you, because he has no explanation for the origin of life. That's what it boils down to. Where did the first life come from? And whether you believe in creation or evolution, it all boils down to the first life came from outside of the natural realm. Either life somehow spontaneously arose and evolved, contrary to all observable science, or we were created by a supernatural being who also created the laws of science and nature in the world around us. Okay, one more thing from Mr. Matzke, and we're going to call it a day for this podcast.
Scientists are never going to buy that. And when a judge hears that, naturally a conservative judge isn't going to just redefine science and conduct a major scientific revolution on the say-so of a few intelligent design experts. So really, the whole idea of redefining science really came back to bite the intelligent design guys in the trial, and it really backfired.
Now, I'm going to disagree with Mr. Matzke here because nobody is attempting to redefine science. All of us except Mr. Matzke. He is allowing only natural explanations. But natural explanations cannot explain life as we know it. Science is based on observation, repeatability, predictability. We will agree on this. I'm sure he would agree with me on this. I'm not attempting to redefine science. Mr. Matzke, however, is, in that he is saying only natural explanations are allowed, but natural explanations say life only comes from life. This is observable, predictable, repeatable. If you defy natural laws, how can you call that natural? It is supernatural. Mr. Matzke is inadvertently attempting to redefine science. The intelligent design community is not attempting to redefine science. Neither am I. Thank you for joining us for this week's podcast. I'm out of here. We'll hope to see you again next time. Remember, send your emails to coreottawa@gmail.com. And we will see you next week when we will respond to Dr. Ken Miller's comments from the Intelligent Design Trial and the NOVA PBS program. I'm your host, Ian Juby. Bye-bye for now.